The Super Bowl is the biggest event in sports here in the United States, and with it being the most watched event, companies are willing to pay top dollar to have their commercials played during the game. And this year, a 30-second commercial was worth $8 million. I have watched all 80 of the commercials, and today, I will be ranking every single Super Bowl commercial and finding out, was it worth the $8 million? Starting with Angel Soft. Angel Soft's commercial was one of those ones that like kind of breaks the fourth wall. It was a commercial with like the little angel telling you to go use the restroom, and obviously Angel Soft being like a what is it? Toilet paper. That's the word. Toilet paper company. You're always going to remember some type of break, especially if you took it. And you'll always be reminded during any football game, any sort of sporting event, if you took a break, you're going to be reminded of Angel Soft. I think the marketing of it was really fun. It was really cute. I give it a B. Next up, we have Big Brothers and Big Sisters. This was one of the ones where they had like a bunch of football, former or active players talking to like the youth, being like, hey, you have an outlet to talk. You have an outlet to be yourself. And football obviously is the main priority here. It's like the main focus. So they have football players. A lot of it kind of stems to like after school clubs related to sports. I also gave this a B. Nothing special, but impactful, if that makes sense. Next up, we have Booking.com. This was the one with the Muppets. Now, I have a tough time with like nostalgia in commercials like this because I'm rather young on the spectrum of age. So there are like actors and actresses that like a bunch of people grew up on, like my parents and even my grandparents. The Muppets are like slightly between me and my parents because like my mom, like she loves the Muppets. But I know like people around my age, maybe a little bit older, that also grew up on the Muppets. I'm going to give it an A because I think the commercial's good. The story of it was really good with like, oh, maybe we want to actually go to amusement park, but then that amusement park and the water park, the other bride-to-be didn't want to be there and then actually wanted to go to Vegas. But what about if they want to cancel that Vegas trip and, you know, they don't really like traveling? You can also do that. Booking.com. I found the storyline to be really good there. Next up, we have Bosch. This was with Randy Macho Man Savage, and correct me if I'm wrong, I am like the worst person with like celebrity names. I could recognize their face and their name will not come to me until I look it up. So Randy Macho Man Savage and another actor, pardon my forgetfulness of his name, they were talking about being a Bosch. It was like, I don't remember the whole premise behind it. I gave it a B. I felt like it was fun. Like I like when they have like characters that then turn into something. Plus, really good slogan, like be a Bosch or something, or like what a Bosch. I really like that like tagline that they had with it. Next up, we have Bud Light. Now, I know over the past few years, Bud Light has had a really fractured reputation. There's been a lot of things, business marketing side, that maybe a lot of drinkers of Bud Light don't agree with. This maybe is the turning point. It's a turning point from recent controversy. They have Post Malone, they have Shane Giles, they also had Peyton Manning, who also showed up a ton throughout the formal game. Like Peyton Manning was filling like a bunch of this super long cooler, by the way, super cool. As for the commercial, I gave it an A simply because people were throwing Bud Lights at people's doors and they were like, yo, well, I have it, take it as an invite. And then like a bunch of people start coming over for the little shindig that they were hosting. Super funny. Like people are just like running manically throughout the street. And I thought that was a really nice touch. Next up, I have Budweiser. I'm going to give it a D. I wasn't a huge fan of it. I do prefer commercials that do kind of hype me up or at least give me an emotion. Like the Google Pixel one, really good because it's not upbeat, but it gives me an emotion, like I can feel something. Even if I'm not the parent in that commercial, which we'll get to, but for Budweiser, it was just a horse and a keg. And there wasn't much like emotion to it. Like I didn't feel impacted. Like, yeah, I want to go drink Budweiser. Like it didn't give me that sense of feeling. So that's why it gets our first D. Next up, we have Carl Jr.'s. This was like the whole thing about a hangover burger. One, I love that they had that marketing standpoint of like, oh, hey, if you download the app and get our rewards, the following Monday, the hangover burger will be yours for free. They had Alex Earl a part of this ad. I also find it weird that some people and some celebrities are in like multiple different ads. It just feels weird. Regardless, they were definitely catering to a certain demographic, Carl's Jr. that is, especially with what Alex was wearing. I gave it an A mostly for the rewards and marketing because I don't think we've seen anything like that where like the day after you can get your hangover burger and like something that is so attached to that event. I thought the marketing standpoint was really good for that. Next up, we have Circle. I'm dragging it into C for Circle, only because of one reason. When Adam Devine came on, I was like, oh my goodness, goodness, like that's Adam Devine. I haven't seen him forever. Thing about this commercial was I was genuinely so confused about what in the world was happening that by the time the ad ended, I was like, what was that ad for? Like, I knew it was for Circle, but it seemed like they had some promotion or I had to like sign up for something and maybe win a water bottle. Only for them when the second ad came through that they were like actually delivering 100,000 bottles or like 10,000 bottles to random homes across America, which if you ask me, really good marketing standpoint. So I gave the first one a C, the second one a B, but collectively they get a C. I want to share with you that this might be the worst commercial of this year's Super Bowl cycle. That, my friends, is Coffee Mate. I think the only one that I have in the F category. I've created its own category because on tier list here, it only goes S, A, B, C, D. I have added an F. And there's one reason why. I understand that we have like the milk stash, like whether you're drinking milk or obviously anything from Coffee Mate. In this case, you would like lick your lips with your tongue like, We didn't need a dancing tongue. How do all of the people working at Coffee Mate, a part of their marketing, come up with that? A dancing tongue. I would have been fine if it were like just shown up, but no. This person had their tongue out and it was flailing around like a dolphin or like a fish out of water. And then it detached and then it started dancing. I was so disturbed when I saw that. It got an instant F. And again, I made its own category. I made its own ranking because of how bad it was. I'll leave it there. Next up, one of my favorites. Honestly, one of my favorites. Coors Light. You get an A, my friend. I love the thought process. It was a little Zootopia-esque because of like the slow sloths. The entire world revolved around sloths. And it was really funny when I forget who was in it. I thought it was Matthew McConaughey. I might be wrong with that, but when he throws the Coors Light at the sloth and he can't grab it fast enough, so it just breaks what's ever on the shelf behind him. Humorous. It was very funny. It was overall just like a great thematic theme. I'm going to remember like the slow sloths more than I am, but I'm going to attach it with Coors Light, which I always feel like are really good ads. When you give them something else that is about a product and them just using it, you're always going to remember it. I guess I mean like they could have done this with Apple. They could have done this with anything else, like shoes, and I would have remembered it. Next up, I have Disney Plus. I don't know what it is about a lot of these, like Circle got a C, Disney Plus gets a D. I like the thought about it. I like the concept of like using these different movies and like kind of cutting them to where it makes like a full story, but they always do that. This just happened to be one of the better ones. They always use this like, oh, there's Hulu and Disney Plus. Like, come on, watch these shows. Give us something different, Disney. That's all that I'm asking. Okay, next up, we have a company that I used to be a driver for. That is DoorDash. I'm giving DoorDash a C because I like the concept, but I feel like it's ever so slightly out of touch. They were harping on like, with all the savings you have and all the savings you get, you will eventually have enough money to then clone yourself. You'll have an opera singer sing to you at any time. And I felt like it was ever so slightly out of touch because DoorDash and all of these third-party apps for food delivery or just general delivery services usually have an surcharge. There's usually an uptick in the general price. Like it might be $10 in store, but it's going to cost like $12.50 on DoorDash. I like the thought of it. I just feel like it's ever so slightly out of touch. Next up, we have one of my favorite ads, Doritos. I feel Doritos has had some of the greatest campaigning when it comes to commercials because they had an entire fan list of Dorito commercials like sent to them. And then the world would decide what commercial would be shown during the big game, the Super Bowl. I don't know why I don't say Super Bowl. I don't have a commercial. I can say Super Bowl. All that to say is that they get all of their marketing for free. And it was so funny with like the Dorito and he like gets thrown all the way around the room only for him to get sucked up to the aliens and then the UFO like split in half and then him like describe and share Doritos with the alien. I thought it was super creative. I feel from a marketing standpoint, it was super cool because there's like this hype of like who won. Like you get to see it live during the Super Bowl. So it's like this anticipation of who won the Dorito competition. Honestly, great marketing, great commercial. As for Doritos. Next up, we have Dove. Dove does not go in the D, but it does go in the C. Only for a few reasons. It was a really good messaging in the ad of like sensitive skin, but I just feel like it could have been better. There could have been a better story and through line all the way through that just maybe impacted women in this case a little bit more. I know I'm a guy. I know the demographic for Dove isn't for me, but I feel like even if I were a father, I felt like if I had a daughter and that ad were to be served to me, it doesn't get me like emotionally invested and be like, oh my goodness, like Dove? Great. Nonetheless, that's why it gets a C. Next up, we got the triple D. Dunkin' Donuts in the D category. This commercial for me, very similar to the Coffee Mate, very similar. I'm genuinely so disturbed at certain aspects around this. So you have Ben Affleck, there's obviously Matt Damon, there's this the joke about Matt Damon not being a part of this. They have Bill Belichick, and I think that's his girlfriend. She looks a lot like Victoria Justice, but I don't think it's Victoria Justice because she was like all up on Bill Belichick. So I'm assuming that's his girlfriend. Nonetheless, they have this like rival competition within like the Starbucks world of Dunkin' Donuts. And they were like, you're about to get roasted. And it just feels really weird because they go backstage and one of the dudes is like head deep, like fully submerged in like wet coffee, and he's like getting ready for the thing. What are we doing? Again, how do people in the marketing come together and they're like, you know what, we're gonna submerge you in a drum barrel of coffee beans, and like wet coffee beans. They're not dry, they're wet coffee beans. I'm just very disturbed by it. I don't feel like I want to buy Dunkin' any more than what I did prior to this. I love the hot chocolate, don't get me wrong, but I very disturbed by that imagery. So that's why it gets a D for me. Next up, we have Duracell. This is where Tom Brady and Kevin, his co-host, they're talking. It almost feels like we're back into the game. They do that a lot with the commentary. So they're back into the game, but then Tom Brady, like I thought he died. I genuinely thought he died. I was like, what's going on? Only to realize that in like, you know, the nameplate that like football players wear, like the sleeve, the armband, basically those needed to be replaced. Like batteries are inside of them and they need to be replaced. There was a few little subliminal things on the armband itself, but it wasn't anything special. It wasn't anything that I was like, wow. It was like a good commercial, but that was about it. The acting wasn't great either. So next up, we have the Kick of Destiny, the FanDuel commercials. Now, I want to say this. There are two of them. They both equally suck, but that's just my opinion. There's always this big FanDuel, and it's like the Kick of Destiny, and this time it was between Peyton Manning and his brother, Eli Manning. So both the brothers going head to head. And for some reason, it feels so weird because I remember when Rob Gronkowski was doing the Kick of Destiny himself, and I was so confused because when it popped up, it didn't look live. It looked like it was scripted. So I don't know how people can bet on the kick, but then it already happened because it's like scripted. So I don't know how they pay out for that. Both of them get a D, genuinely. I think it looks cool. I love the idea of like Eli Manning sitting in the chair with his giant foot, but the commercials are never that great. It doesn't make me want to like download FanDuel. I'm really genuinely surprised that we did not see more like betting commercials because that market is huge. So I don't know if there's like a no limits and FanDuel just happens to be the partner with the NFL that there's like, you can't get DraftKings, no prize picks. So I'm curious about that. Nonetheless, they both get a D. Next up, we have what I would call the Mr. Beast commercial. This was Fetch. I give this a D. Now, one thing, I did download Fetch and I sat there for probably 10 minutes trying to see if I won 10 grand. They gave away $1.2 million to 120 people. So 10,000 to 120 people equaling 1.2 million. And this was what I would refer to as the Mr. Beast commercial because it wasn't Mr. Beast, but the elements that we've seen in videos and things similar like, hey, if you download this app, you potentially could earn 10,000. We see this with a lot of ads, a part of Mr. Beast videos. That was their take on it, Fetch. And I think it was a good way of getting people to download it, but I think long-term, you're going to get 1 million plus people, but only like 100,000 are going to stay, if that makes sense. So it gets a D. Okay, so next up, we have GoDaddy. They basically were playing on like the word name of Walter Goggins glasses. It's a lot of words there. It's like, say that 10 times fast. I hope you're saying it 10 times fast right now. Nonetheless, I give this one a B only because I actually think from a GoDaddy perspective, it was super cool being like, oh my goodness, like it'll even create a schedule. It's not just like make a post, but it's like build out a schedule, obviously through AI, obviously, however you feel about that. At least if I were to use it, it would feel like a practical use for me. For anyone that doesn't know the actor, that's the same guy that played the ghoul in Fallout. I do know that actor, okay? Next up, we have probably one of the most emotional ads, and it happens to be for Google Pixel. Who would have thought? Google Pixel, you freaking rocked with this. You get an S tier. Only because I never thought that I would be like emotionally invested in like a story of a father and daughter and his daughter growing up and then eventually moving to college and he doesn't have time to, I don't know, like spend time with her, but he can with a Google Pixel and he can learn how to be a father and learn how to do things right via Gemini, all of that stuff. So it's a phone. There's cool features on it, but the emotional storytelling of it has me on my knees thinking about life. Maybe not on my knees, but thinking about life. So next up, we have another Google ad. This one is for Google Workspace. Now, they took a bold approach by having 50 different ads play in 50 different states, depending on where you were watching from. I'm going to go ahead and give this one a C. I like the idea of it, but it is on the more boring side of commercials. I don't feel like I'm going to remember it. Maybe a different ad might serve me better, especially because there's 50 of them, and depending on where I live, I'm going to see something different. I'm going to give it a C. Probably would be a D just for how boring it was. And it's like, oh, use Google. But I do like the bold choice to at least show something that is more personal to the person that is watching in that state. Next up, we have Haagen-Dazs. I spoke on nostalgia earlier in this video. This one is a failed attempt at that. Haagen-Dazs, you get a D simply because you tried to just like play on like the riding around in this lowrider type car. You have the cast from Fast and the Furious, and they're eating Haagen-Dazs on the beach in the warm weather. It wasn't anything special. I don't know what it is about Haagen-Dazs, but I have never remembered a good commercial by them. Let me know if you know any good Haagen-Dazs commercials, because it's not made me want to eat any of it. So next up, we have HeGetsUs.com. This is one of those ones that shows photos of conflict, people that you would see and normally be told that they're on opposite sides, but there is a commonality that Jesus, gets us. And so I always like these commercials because I feel like it's on the right side of like political, but not like preachy political. Like, yeah, there's going to be political tension. There's going to be just tension within life. That's just general life. And so I feel like there's a point to be made without it feeling like I'm being told that this is how it should be. It gets an A for me. Now, next up, we have Hellmann's Food. I'm going to let you guys know, when I first saw this ad, I was like, oh my goodness, that's Best Foods. And then the bottle of mayonnaise goes onto the desk at the diner. I'm like, that's not Best Foods. Do they take that? I don't know what it is about companies like Carl's Jr. and Hardee's, how they have two different names depending on where you're at. Hellmann's and Best Foods is no different. Hellmann's Food in their commercial, this one honestly gets an S tier. I would have put it in A, but I think there's like a level above, because I think there's a line in here, especially with Sydney Sweeney's call and answer to that. Man, she puts like her mayonnaise. I forget her name. I don't know her name. I don't know the two people at the desk at the diner, but there was a scene where she puts the mayonnaise and then she's like really enjoying it. And then the guy's like, oh, that one's real. Just a subtle like adult humor that like you would get if you're an adult or are old enough to understand. And then Sydney Sweeney being like, I'll have what she's having. And it's just like, oh, okay. It's like a funny commercial. So S for Sydney Sweeney. Plus she's also from Spokane. So next up, we have HexCloud. This was the Pan commercial with Gordon Ramsay and Pete Davidson and I guess an alien. I'm going to give this one a B simply because it did harp on the joke that, oh, like all celebrities are aliens. And Gordon Ramsay said, well, I'm a celebrity. He's like, no. Pete Davidson, this is. He's like, no. Like big, like huge celebrities. And I just thought that the humor in it was really funny. And then also the touching on like every single celebrity is like a lizard or alien. That was really like to the T of really nice touch. Okay, next up, we have maybe a slightly controversial ad, Him and Hers. Now, I know that there's been a lot of these, like, what I would consider like supplemental weight loss, whether that's like a pill, whether that's like an injection. I know like Mounjaro and Ozempic and different things of that nature have been at the spotlight as of like the last year. Like Ozempic's been like a huge joke. Like South Park made one on Lizzo. Lizzo wore that for Halloween, and Ozempic and like Drake and Ozempic and most celebrities, like, oh, you have Ozempic face. There's been this whole celebrity thing about it. Though I will say that this ad doesn't harp towards a celebrity. It harps on like a new way of losing weight. And sure, I'm sure this will work for a lot of people. I'm always under the impression like, get to the gym, track your calories, make sure you're burning more than you're taking in. Sure, there might be certain things you can and cannot have depending on like your stature. Like if you're a thick, burly person, red meat all the way, just eat it. You know, whereas like somebody who's trying to lose a bit of fat, trying to get into shape, there's going to be other things that you would eat. I'm under the guise that is a very traditional sense of weight loss. This kind of harped on that. I give it a C because I feel like the approach is just controversial enough that you can get someone like me that maybe isn't seeing eye to eye with that. But then also there's going to be people that find this of need to their life. So I gave it a C just because it kind of harped on both sides of the line. Like there was a line that was drawn. Next up, we have Homes.com. Now, I remember last year's Super Bowl or the one prior, Homes.com and Apartments.com absolutely crushed these Super Bowl commercials. This one is no different. I just feel like our expectations might be a little subverted because of how good the previous ones were. The first one, when Morgan Freeman's in there and he's talking about like Homes.com is the best.com. And he's like, you can't say that. He's like, can't say what? And he's like, Homes.com is the best.com. He's like, ha, gotcha. Honestly, I have it written as A. I'm going to give that one an S tier. I'm giving that one an S tier because of like the pure joke that like, oh, he got him. The next one, Homes.com 2. I'm going to give this one an A. I feel like it was kind of cool because they were like, Homes.com is the best.com. And there was like this whole line of the URL being that. And that was really funny. Really well done by the two main actors. And Morgan Freeman was a great touch as always. So that one gets an A for me. Next up, we have a movie trailer, How to Train Your Dragon, the live action cut of the series. It's just a live action version of it. I personally am not fond of the movie being live action. I would prefer to be animated, but I do give this one a B because it actually like was a cool trailer. It did kind of hype me up and I'm like, huh, maybe that is gonna be a good movie. It did enough to maybe think about the movie, even if I've already kind of written it off because it is a live action of a movie that was formerly animated. So it gets a B for that. This next one has to be my favorite commercial of all. This one is Instacart. I talked about nostalgia, and there's a few people and a few actors and actresses that I don't really recognize and I didn't really grow up with. Instacart, the entirety of every star-studded cast in there, I knew. And when I mean star-studded cast, I don't mean like an actor or actress. I mean like a mascot. Chester. They have the Energizer Bunny. They have the Kool-Aid Man. They have all of these mascots all in one room for this commercial. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is this? This almost reminded me of the Paramount Plus when that was coming out. And they had, you know, Jeff Probst, they had Dora, they had a whole bunch of these people that I'm like, oh my goodness, like what are we doing here? Oh my goodness, only for it to be a Paramount Plus commercial. This one is no different. The Energizer Bunny's like flying through, Chester's running through. I don't even know if Tony the Tiger's in there. Kool-Aid Man like breaks through like a brick wall, which is like super meta. Instacart, you're my favorite ad. And you get an S tier because of the nostalgia and the hype and all these cool mascots being a part of one commercial. Next up, we have Jeep. I have Jeep written as C, but the more that I think about it, it's a D. One of two reasons. When I saw Harrison Ford and he's talking about like the freedom we have in here in America, a little out of touch right now, but I will say that Harrison Ford, I should give an F tier for Ford. I really should, because Harrison Ford not being in a Ford commercial, like a true Ford commercial, is a missed opportunity. Now, I don't know if Jeep is owned by Ford. There's a whole bunch of parent companies, whatever it may look like, but he's a part of a Jeep commercial talking about freedom. I would give it a C because it is on the boring side and he just kind of rambles on. But it's also a minute long, maybe even like a minute 20. Like it's a super long ad. Like we are watching Harrison Ford sitting at a bar for at least 30 seconds of that, only to get up, be shown a photo or like a video of like the car when it first got invented. And I was like, oh my God, it's a Ford commercial. No, it's a Jeep Wrangler. That's why it gets a D. Next up, we have Scarlett Johansson starring in Jurassic World Rebirth. I'm going to give this one an S tier. I'm not one for like, oh my goodness, they're continuing the series. And especially with Jurassic World, Jurassic Park, that whole saga, they have just milked to the T. This one, I kind of F with. Okay, so next up, we have the beloved chip brand, Lay's. I'm going to give this one a C tier. I like the story of like the family like growing their own potatoes and then that kind of being converted into a bag of chips that they would then eat. It was on the duller side. Like it felt like it was very somber. Like I would have loved like a cool montage of like, oh my goodness, like this daughter, like then taking over the farm of some sort. And we kind of stuck in the same year of like the harvest of harvesting potatoes to them going to the manufacturer and then the manufacturer making the potatoes and then that bag of Lay's coming to the front door. And it overall was an okay ad. Maybe a little bit of teary eyes if you like, maybe if you're on the emotional side. I had no teary eyes, but cool story, just not the right execution, if you ask me. Next up, we have, again, one of my favorites. Everything in the S tier is one of my favorites. It's just objectively true. This one, Liquid Death, man. Liquid Death had such a great marketing commercial for the Super Bowl. Most people have maybe heard about Liquid Death. The true story about Liquid Death is that this guy, I think in Wisconsin, wanted to go party but didn't want to drink, but also wanted to be socially engaged within the activities. So he made a company called Liquid Death because at least the name sounds like a beer company or some type of alcoholic beverage. He created that, but it just so happens that all of Liquid Death that it is water. With the branding, with how the bottles look, they're rather tall. They look like a tall boy. And with Liquid Death, all these people are drinking Liquid Death, like the surgeon, just so many different people a part of this commercial are drinking it in places that they're not supposed to be, like in school. But no. Liquid Death is just water. And they've come out with a bunch of different flavors. They have them at Spartan races that I do. And honestly, great marketing because you're like, oh my gosh, only to find out that it's like water or like sparkling peach tea. Next up, we have Little Caesars. Martin Levy, his eyebrows disappear and they go flying. And those crazy puffs are really crazy, I guess. I'm going to give this one an A simply because it was kind of like a fun concept on somebody's appearance. It almost reminds me of like little caricatures, like giving life to something that typically doesn't have life. Like a personification of his eyebrows. They go flying. And there's another commercial in here by Pringles that does the same thing, which really funny, same approach, but very different outcome. This one gets an A just because it's, I guess, Little Caesars, the pizza partner of the NFL, but then also it's kind of just Crazy Puffs. That's kind of it. Next up, we have Megan 2.0. This is the sequel to the original Megan series. The whole movie, the original one, the 1.0 Megan. Honestly, a great movie. I think she looks really weird in this commercial. She looks like the doll grew up a little bit, like she's actually aging, but she's a robot. So how does a robot age? Usually robots, because they're metal, they would actually age and rust. This one gets a D. Doesn't make me want to watch the movie. And it was like 15 seconds, by the way. It was like super short. Next up, we have the Meta Ray-Ban commercials. Now, there's two of them. Both of them have a different rating, but both of them have a different approach because you have Chris Hemsworth, and I don't know if that is Chris Pratt. I think it might have been, but it doesn't look like Chris Pratt. Is Chris Pratt on Ozempic? He just didn't look like the Chris Pratt I know. Maybe the glasses are doing him a little disservice, but regardless, the first one for me gets an A. It's kind of, they're in this art installment and Chris Hemsworth is like, oh my goodness, like, hey Meta, can you record like this? And then it just so happens that Chris Pratt broke the sculpture, like the head falls off, and he's like, Meta, delete that video. It's just kind of funny banter, funny humor. The next one, we have a surprise guest, Kris Jenner. She pops in. I don't know what her role is in here, but she's a part of it. But the funny part is that Chris Hemsworth and Chris Pratt, one of them is like looking at a painting. The other one goes and is hungry. I think it's Chris Hemsworth's hungry. He grabs a banana and eats it. And we all know that infamous $12 million painting, an art piece, that was a banana taped to a wall. Very meta with like the real world. So that was why it gets an S. Next up, we have that Michelob Ultra commercial that I was talking about with me not knowing who every actor and actress is. This one has William Dafoe, and I think the lady was also the same one from the Best Food Hellmann's commercial that had Sydney Sweeney. I think it's the same actress. I could be wrong on that, but they look very similar. That happens a lot in Hollywood. I don't know why. But from this commercial, playing pickleball, they're a lot older, which I think is super meta, and they're like drinking Michelobs and they're like crushing like every single opponent that they're up against. Super funny, super meta. I think it was like a minute long too. I might bump it down to B just because it was kind of long and maybe the extra 30 seconds isn't worth it. I'm going to leave it an A for right now because I feel like the pickleball, it was just jam-packed all the way through. It didn't feel like a minute, but it was a minute. Next up, we have Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. This is Tom Cruise's final Mission Impossible. There's obviously epic stunts that he always does himself. He makes himself a producer and then puts himself in situations that risk his life. I give this one an A as well. I like how they set this up being like, hey, I have one final favor to ask. And that's like something he always asks a part of these movies. And it's like, man, this is the final one. You do not want to miss it. So this one gets an A because it's like, man, I want to see the stunts regardless of how good the movie is. Next up, we have MSC Cruise Lines. It threw me off guard. I love the jokes in this. It's really funny that they have Drew Barrymore. I forget the guy's name. I feel like they would have played in like the Goonies or something. I just don't know the guy's name. I recognize him. I just don't know him. They have all these like football. It's just like funny because football isn't like soccer here in America, but then we call American football football. So they had like some fun jokes about that. They show different areas of the cruise line. And I guess it's a rather new cruise line. Maybe it has been one that has existed for a bit of time, but as for now, it's a good ad. Funny, meta, slightly nostalgic. I'm going to go ahead and give this one an A as well. This next one though is not in the A tier. This commercial, Mountain Dew. I don't know what you were thinking of. I don't know what you were doing. Great concept, very disturbing execution. Seal as a seal, and he's also as a human form. He's in human form on the boat. Genuinely very disturbed. I have it written down as C, but the more that I'm thinking about Seal as Seal, regardless of how good the CGI is, it's going right in D. It's going right in D. Very disturbed. Very confused. I think it was also a minute-long ad, too. So you're paid $60 million for Seal to be a seal. Next up, we have Nerds with Shaboozey, starring Shaboozey. He's obviously had a great run, especially post-Beyonce album. He's obviously made a name for himself beyond just that with a bar song. It's been playing everywhere. This was a miss for me. It's nice to see him a part of the commercial. It's a person that I recognize, but there wasn't really any substance. It was just kind of like Nerds gummies. Like, I already eat Nerds gummies. They're good, but it didn't make me want to like go out and eat more Nerds gummies. So that's why it gets a C for me. Next up, we have Nerd Wallet. I find this commercial to be really funny. The hard part is that it's one of those commercials that is shown prior to the game, and then they just show the same commercial at the game. So this guy's like on like a little cruise line. He drops his phone into the water. This beluga whale ends up having his phone and he starts talking to him. And I was like thinking, what is this commercial? Like, is it like AI because like the animal can talk to you? And the guy on the boat's thinking he's hallucinating, but then this guy, the whale, is talking to him about Nerd Wallet. It's a fun little quirky ad. I give it a B. It was already shown. It's been shown after. I give it a B. Next up, we have NFL flag football. Now, I love this commercial. I am a former flag football player myself. I grew up playing flag football. I never liked tackle. Flag football was super cool because it's almost like a completely different game. Super fun in that way. There's a different set of rules. There's other ways that obviously people tackle you by taking your flag. But the big thing is with this, there is kind of like a gender boundary that they kind of presented within like the best female player, and like she corrects him because we're going to grab your best guy. She's like, girl, whatnot. And then they show the random dude. I don't know, it feels like a grown-ups movie, but they have their best guy. His name's like Chad or something. And he tries to take her out, but can't because she's really good at flag football. I love flag football from a women's sports perspective, a men's sports perspective. Honestly, really, really cool. They also had an NFL flag football celebrity game. It's now the Pro Bowl. I love it. We played against multiple female flag football teams, the Triple Fs, and they're really good. Like, that's the one thing, like, they are really good. So this why this one gets an A tier. Really good commercial. Messaging's also on point. And speaking of messaging, Nike's first Super Bowl commercial since like the 90s, 98. Super long time since Nike's had a Super Bowl ad. I don't know why they haven't. I feel like they're one of the bigger companies just globally recognized. Like, they can do a lot of really good with it. And this year they did that. They actually shown a bunch of famous American female athletes. They had Asia Wilson, Sabrina Ionescu. They had Sophie Smith. They had Jordan Childs. They had a bunch of different female athletes from different disciplines: soccer, basketball, gymnastics, even Sha'Carri Richardson. And I watched the video with her and Speed, and she corrects him on how to pronounce her name, but I never remember how to pronounce it, if it's Sha'Carri or Sha'Carri. I think it's Sha'Carri, like I carry something, not like I carry something. I think it's Sha'Carri. Regardless, that's just my internal dialogue playing out. They have this commercial promoting a good general basis of like, if you can't win, go win, or like something along the lines of that. And obviously a lot of it is stemmed through women's sports, because there has been like a lot of narrative driven around that, and not a great light, in a more negative light of like shunning women's sports. Like, they'll never be as good as blank, the men in this case. It doesn't detract. It very much lifts up. And I always feel if any company harps on that, that's the thing of like still lifting up, but not diminishing anything else. And I feel like they did a really good job. And I like Nike's approach over this last year. Oh, you said that you can't win, you can't do this. Well, go do it, go win. And I love that attitude. Like, the whole just do it. They're taking that marketing to a whole different level. And I love it. Nike's women's gets an S tier. Gets an S tier. Super cool commercial. I know some people are like quaking at that one. Super cool though. Love that commercial. Next up, we have Novartis. I think it's Novartis. It's Novartis. It's the breast cancer one, talking about like percentage. They have Wanda Sykes. They have Haley Steinfeld. Is it Steinfeld or Seinfeld? Does it have a T? Inner dialogue again. We have Haley, Wanda Sykes, and a bunch of other women. And it felt really weird when I was first watching it because I hadn't seen the Carl's Jr. one yet. And I knew that there was going to be some surprise, especially with Alex too. And it seemed a little like sexually charged with the Carl's Jr. one from what I knew. So I was thinking it was this one because there was like just boobs on my screen and I didn't know where this was headed. It eventually became a breast cancer commercial. And I was like, man, what a great way to like throw you off. I was thinking it was going to be for like a bra, like maybe like a Victoria's Secret, maybe a Skims commercial too. It ended up being a breast cancer and like awareness about that. And I thought that was a really decently good approach. I can understand some people really sexualizing that. I gave it A because of like the shock factor of it. I was like very like, what is happening? Why are there just a bunch of boobs and girls dancing? And I was like, where is this headed? I'm watching this with my father, only for it to be that. And I thought that was a really good approach. So good on you. Next up, we have a Novocaine movie trailer. Now, I think this is one of the ones that I missed live. I watched every other one. I forgot like the Mountain Dew one. This one must have played in sequence with that. Novocaine, this movie about a guy that can't feel any pain, which not a new concept, but a very unique concept in this one because the movie, I don't know, it's a weird movie. I gave this one a C. Nothing special. The movie plot's nothing new. And I missed the commercial originally. So even when I rewatched it, I was like, that played on the Super Bowl? That played at it? Was that really worth $8 million? Next up, we have NYU Health. I give this one a C as well. It's a bunch of people in the healthcare system, especially apparently at NYU, playing football, and they're not really good at it, but they are also really good in the medical field and diagnosing you and helping you. And I thought it was a great juxtaposition behind that. It was like fun playing jokes like, hey, we might not be good at playing football, but we're really good at this in the medical field. So I gave it a C. It wasn't anything special, though the storyline was pretty funny. Next up, we have OpenAI. I hate to say this. It's getting a C. This one felt like an Apple commercial. Obviously, they're in the same lane, technology, things around that. The one thing about this that felt off, they had this giant text in the middle of the commercial that, look, I was like, oh my goodness, it's Apple Intelligence. No, it's OpenAI. And they show like the evolution of a bunch of different things from motor to just the evolution of human and man and, you know, x-rays and a bunch of stuff. And it's all these halftones. So it's all these white circles with like the blending background. So you can gauge depth depending on how big or small things are. It's a really good and well-crafted commercial, but it didn't give me the effect that I want to go use ChatGPT and use OpenAI. I was a little underwhelmed when I found out that it was that. There's like no person talking. It's just a bunch of music and a bunch of halftone characters walking around doing things, all for it to look like an Apple Intelligence commercial. I was really underwhelmed when I found that out. Next up, we have Pfizer. This was a pretty interesting one. I know Pfizer's got a lot of criticism, especially post-COVID. This commercial as a whole does really well to the pure nature of beating cancer. This was what I refer to as the beating cancer kid, because he's like, mom's gonna knock you out. Like the music in the background is talking about him beating cancer. I gave this one a B. There's a good emotional side to it. My dad joked like, oh man, this kid beat cancer. Now he has to run all the way home. Like his mom or dad didn't pick him up or just like anyone picked him up. But it was really cool. I think overall it was a commercial that did justice for what it was. But if it were like another brand, maybe it would have been better, if that makes sense. I feel like they were really preachy in a different field without acknowledging some other things within their company. And that was kind of the downside to it. So I gave it a B because of that. Next up, we have Poppy. This one also has Alex Earl in it. Though she's not the main star like she is in the Carl's Jr. ad, I gave this one a B because it was a commercial that I had seen before. And like, it's one of those ones that shows before, plays during the Super Bowl, and probably will play after. I like the concept of like, oh, what do I drink? What do I drink? Oh, Poppy. Cool. Just drink a Poppy. Cool. Oh my God, Poppy. Cool. It doesn't do justice for like maybe me wanting to drink a Poppy. I've seen them in stores. The issue with this commercial is they create a problem and the only solution is Poppy. Next up, we have Pringles. This ad was so funny. Now, I talked about the Little Caesar one with Martin Levy and his eyebrows popping off. Well, it just so happens that Pringles, their whole marketing, especially with the Mandela effect, is like the mustache. The Pringles can has a mustache on it. So there's a bunch of mustaches off these famous people and just people in general flying. And just so happens that James Harden's mustache falls off and he looks really weird and he can't find his mustache. He doesn't have it back. So there's this weird gap in his beard and a lot of it's obviously CGI and looks really weird in general. But I will say super well done. Kudos out to you, Pringles. You know how to market your company from your packaging and also package that commercial. And the concept into a really great Super Bowl ad. So congratulations, Pringles. One of my favorites as well. Next up, we have Ram. Ram had Glenn Powell almost with this luscious blonde hair looking like Thor in a way. I thought it was all right. And it just so happens, I think there's goats in the back of the car as well. I gave it a B because like it is Ram. It's like a fun commercial. They're usually pretty good. I feel like the main focus wasn't the car itself. It was the storyline of the commercial, which actually plays more into their advantage than their disadvantage. So I gave it a B because it was an all right and good commercial. Next up, we have Red Bull. Red Bull, super cool idea of taking like these little sketchbook cartoons and there's like these penguins or there's a bunch of people maybe on a plane like, oh, Red Bull gives you wings. I am surprised beyond any extent of my imagination that Red Bull, for how cool they have been, all of their commercials on TV and on cable network have been so directly towards the drink. Like, I hope that they should do something like Nike where they show these extreme things that go on and they're like, Red Bull gives you wings and it's a guy jumping down through and setting the world record for the longest ski jump. Red Bull gives you wings. Like, how cool would that be? Instead of just like a penguin or a guy on a plane. This one happened to be the penguin one. You know what? I gave it a D. It probably could go an F because there's so much potential with Red Bull. At this point, they might be more known for the extreme sport side of Red Bull than they are the drink side of their company. Next up, we have Reese's Peanut Butter Cup. Now, this is just Reese's in general, of course, but it's about their brand new Big Lava Cup. Obviously, if you eat the Reese's, there's lava, and they're playing on this like, oh my goodness, like touching a volcano and all the lava. There's a grandma on her little scooter. There's a bunch of old people trying to like eat the lava. But no, they're like, eat Reese's Lava Cup. And they're trying to eat the lava. No, eat Reese's Lava Cup. Really great marketing. Overall, I give that one an A. I thought it was a well-constructed commercial, funny jokes, and obviously the pitter-patter going in between lava, no lava cup, lava, no lava cup. That's why it deserves an A for me. Next up, we have Ritz crackers. This one was a little underwhelming. There were some good jokes in there, but it wasn't anything special. It was just kind of like salty, like you should smile more. Like, I get that. I get like playing against the salty side because Ritz crackers do have salt on them, but I wish that the story was slightly different. Maybe more so that like one individual person was eating so much like Ritz crackers that he was so salty that he never smiled. But they have these two people and there's a whole bunch of Ritz and somebody comes over and he's smiling, but he can't because he's eating Ritz crackers. But I just think it does almost the opposite effect because wouldn't you want people to smile? But they're salty. So then they're not smiling. Anyways, it deserves a C. Next up, we have Salesforce. There was two commercials that actually played. One that I have seen before with Matthew McConaughey in like the pouring rain, and Woody Harrelson is on the other side. He's like, hey, come eat with us. But the other one is Salesforce, and it's all of their AI, and it's like trying to be efficient. And just so happens that Matthew McConaughey is like struggling to get to his plane and just do a bunch of basic tasks. I like that commercial more just because that was a newer commercial that I hadn't seen before. And that's what I wish some commercials would do, because I've seen the one where it rains, but now I'm seeing a different version and like an extended version of that. So Salesforce for me gets a B. It gets a B. I also want to mention Rocket also had an ad. I did forget to create a little template for it. Rocket Money, I was very confused, by the way, because I know Rocket Money is Rocket Money, Rocket Mortgage, Rocket Home, maybe even insurance as well. But then it says rocket.com and I was like, is that a different company? No, it's like the exact same thing, just like the entire umbrella under one.com. I was very confused. I give it a C. It's not on here, but just know, between me and you, rocket.com gets a C, okay? Next up, we have my favorite commercial of all. I don't know what it is about Martha Stewart, but every single time that I see her on camera, especially post-prison, she has been like the golden child of advertisement, and this is no different. I'm sure you guys have seen those videos of like AI where you put a photo of you and they're doing a whole bunch of dunking or you're doing a bunch of flips and gymnastics. They took that idea and made it a commercial with Martha Stewart. Skechers, your first commercial was freaking great. Martha Stewart's like dancing in Skechers. She's doing a whole bunch of like crazy stuff. You could tell that it's AI or like CGI in this case, but Martha, my girl, you crush it every time. We love Martha. Next up, we have Skechers 2 with Andy Reid. This one is a little subpar. There's some like fun things where he's like a hand model and like the Skechers slip-ins. It's a different commercial than the Martha one, but I typically don't like commercials with like coaches or players. I just don't, because like I feel like it takes away from you like being on the field. And I know like Patrick Mahomes has been in so many commercials, from State Farm to T-Mobile. He's been in so many different commercials that I'm just like, how are you have like time to play football? And I understand that there probably is time, but it feels weird. And I haven't gotten over that hump. So Andy Reid, Bundle Ruski, Skechers, you get a B because it was an all right commercial. Next up, we have the beloved website Squarespace, where you can customize and make your own templates. And I like the commercial standpoint of like this, like when they would throw the newspaper. We used to pick up the newspaper off of our front garage, our driveway. That's a driveway. I don't know why I struggled to do that. Felt like Carlos Alcaraz trying to draw a smiley face. Anywho, we used to have the newspaper thrown on our driveway, and we go outside and go pick it up. That's no longer the days, but Squarespace brought that back, but throwing laptops in people's homes, like breaking glass, and they can make their own custom website. It's a fun little commercial. It does feel weird with Barry. I forget his last name, but Barry, because all I can think about is Saltburn, and I haven't watched it, but I can't get the concept that he came up with the graveyard scene himself. So every time I look at it, I'm just like slightly disturbed at the thought of it. This one gets a B for me just because the concept is kind of funny. Next up, we have the Stand Up to Hate. There's 2 commercials that aired for Stand Up for Hate. It just so happens that they're the exact same commercial. I don't know why that's the case. They are the exact same commercial. I gave these ones a D. I would have loved, and I know like I'm maybe not like the political pundit out there, but I would have loved if they had like someone from the left and right on there, or somebody like so polarizing that you'd be like, oh my God, these guys must hate each other. They had Tom Brady and Snoop Dogg. These people probably don't hate each other. Both of them probably don't hate each other. So when they're trying to get this message across and they're talking about like, I hate you because like, whatever, I don't feel the impact. And not only that, they played it once and I was like, all right. But then to play it again, I think they should have brought some real life stuff, almost like with the He Gets Us ads. Like that's some real life like conflict. Next up, we have Stella Artois. This was the one with David Beckham, and he has this long lost, I believe, stepbrother, half-brother, or twin, and it happens to be Matt Damon. And they play along the fun lines of football and like, oh, like, did you have a successful career? Like, how good were you? Because he just doesn't know. He's American. Like, he doesn't know. He's the ignorant American that doesn't know much about soccer. That's me. So this one gets an A. I feel like it's a really funny concept. I think they could have done better for like a twin side of things, but I think they did a good enough job that I understand that those are 2 different people. So it gets an A for me. Next up, we have this Stitch movie trailer. This one, honestly, super freaking fun. Super freaking fun. We came back from commercial and it almost seems like, or we were getting started. I think the Star Spangled Banner had played. Kevin, the commentator, was like, oh no, we have an incident happening on the field, and it almost feels like a breakup. I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was Tubi like a year or 2 ago, and like everyone thought that the ad had popped up. They thought that they were talking about the game, only for Tubi to like pop up and then close out of the app, and it almost felt like somebody had stepped on the remote. That commercial, this one kind of reminded me of it. I still gave it an S tier because I feel like the execution was really good. Plus, Stitch is like my favorite. I have an entire poster in the background here of Stitch. So kudos out to you. You always do well. Next up, we have T-Mobile X Starlink. It's just a commercial talking about, hey, T-Mobile is gearing up and they're teaming up with Starlink. Maybe not the greatest of time, but I guess if it happened anyways, I'm sure like whatever Elon Musk has been doing, I'm sure that hasn't detracted from any negotiations. And I like Starlink. We've used it for multiple different purposes for work, and it works well, and it's super fast, and it's very efficient. And if that's the world that we live in, then maybe we just got to eliminate the name at the top of it. And especially now, I'm sure Elon might turn it around, but the hopes right now aren't hopeful. So all that to say, T-Mobile, you get a C. You're getting a C. I like the link up, but it wasn't anything special from a commercial standpoint. Next up, we have Taco Bell. Now, Doja Cat has been one of the biggest spokesperson for Taco Bell over the last year. She's also had like the Mexican pizza song that went viral on TikTok. And it just so happens that the commercial that she's been in, and this one also stars LeBron James, which is also funny because they pan over to him. He's like, taco too. Oh, come on. He throws the bags on the ground, then he crashes out at the end of the commercial. I find it to be really funny. The star-studded cast cast. It feels weird seeing Doja Cat without her long hair. I feel like I still haven't gotten used to that. But Taco Bell gets a B. I love the joke that LeBron James can't say Taco Tuesday yet because I think it's trademarked, or maybe they already have the trademark, but they've played on the joke that he can't say it yet. So that's really funny. Next up, we have the Thunderbolts, I think, official movie trailer. It's not a teaser anymore. They had a teaser where it looked like Bucky, the Winter Soldier. He was trying to attack the people, part of the Thunderbolts. Just so happens that this movie has a different approach. It seems like there's just a different approach. I can't describe it off the top of my head, but it makes me want to watch the movie. And most movie trailers aren't really that great. Like Novocaine doesn't make me want to watch the movie. But Thunderbolts, I was not invested in Thunderbolts until I watched this commercial. I'm going to give it a B. It could be A, but it's also a movie trailer. So I got to think about that in the respects that it is. Next up, we have the Totino's commercial. I love this one. I always remember like he's talking. I don't remember what he says at like the first half, but then this little alien guy, he's trying to get back into his UFO, but then gets squished by the shutting doors. And these three kids are like, oh my gosh, super funny. And then they also have the meme guy. I don't know his name, but I see him in memes all across Instagram Reels. He's like, are you sure about that? Super funny that they got him in a commercial. I'm sure everyone recognized him. And so for that reason, I gave Totino's an A. Next up, we have TurboTax. Issa Rae is who stars in this commercial. This person, Issa, that is, I don't know why I said this person, but Issa Rae is the person that stars in this. That is one person that I do know. It's a TurboTax commercial. They're always going to have a bunch. I'm surprised that there wasn't more. There wasn't like an H&R Block commercial. Intuit and TurboTax are the exact same thing, but I'm surprised that there wasn't more commercials for tax season. With all that said, I'm giving this one a B. It's a tax commercial. Pretty fun. Issa Rae's also great in it, so that also kind of bumps it up from like a normal C. C's like a good average. You know, you could have done better, but this one, it did the job. Did a good job. Next up, we have the Uber Eats commercial. This is where Matthew McConaughey, who has been kind of the spokesperson for it. I love the Jerry Rice line that they have in other commercials, but this one, he's like Mike Ditka. He's like, do we have to be called the fridge? Yes. It's like a fun play on words from like historical preferences for sports fandom. And then also, I didn't think that it was an Uber Eats ad. I thought it was going to be a Salesforce ad, only for it to be an Uber Eats ad. This one also gets a B. I feel like they could have done so much more. Overall, a decently good ad. Next up, we have WeatherTech. This felt like the 80 for Brady cast, though it's not the cast. It very much felt like that. They're driving in a lowrider and, they're these old ladies having fun like they do in 80 for Brady. Also, 80 for Brady's a really good movie. Nonetheless, WeatherTech, this one gets a C. This one, you're getting to see WeatherTech having a bunch of fun. They just happen to have a little oopsie because they're old. And they're like, she's like, don't worry, I have WeatherTech. And I'm like, okay, well, it's like the through line is very obvious. Like these old ladies that are maybe slightly clumsy having fun and they drop something. It's like the through line, I already know how the story is going to end, and it's a WeatherTech ad. So it gets a C for that reason. Next up, we have Yahoo. This ad is a little depressing for one of two reasons. Bill Murray, he's getting old. I understand that. But Yahoo. I don't know what we were doing here. There isn't like a I'm more confused. I have so many questions. I have so many questions about this ad and this commercial as a whole, because Bill Murray holds up like a sign. He's like, oh, do you feel like you're confused and lost? And then he throws up like a help sign that has like his Yahoo address. And I'm assuming people are supposed to download Yahoo and they're supposed to email that. I'm assuming that's the whole thing because they're trying to help Bill. But I just felt like it felt flat. Like it fell flat right on its face. And I feel so sad. Like I feel like somebody's lost himself. It's not his fault. It's not Bill Murray's fault. He's just old and that's what the script he got. So Bill Murray, I'm sorry, you get a D. That was not a good ad. Next up, we have YouTube TV. Now, I had it written down on my initial list when I was first watching the Super Bowl and adding all of the commercials and my thoughts to it, but I could not remember what it was. Not a bad thing. It just happened so early into the game. They had a whole promo for it, and it just so happens that this was the migration one. They had a bunch of these different players, obviously all CGI, but they were, flying like birds, going to different places, and I'm sure maybe there's a little joke here or there. YouTube TV, you get a B. It's creative with the migration, all the players, the Seahawks, the Ravens, super cool because they're birds. I don't know if I didn't mention that, so I feel like you guys wouldn't have caught on to that, but hopefully that makes sense. Like they had actual NFL teams that are birds part of this ad. So hopefully that makes sense. Next up, we have Zim. John Stamos is the spokesperson for this. And Zim is, I have no idea what Zim is. It feels like Quibi. Like it feels like, I remember somebody that worked for Quibi. Their mind was in a completely different place when I met them. I don't think we're ever getting them back. They were like, Quibi's like the future. And I was like, you could not be more out of touch than right now in this moment. And it's probably only gotten worse. Then Quibi is no longer a thing. Zeem, I think, is kind of a part of that. Let me look up what Zeem is. Zeem official site. Yeah, so this is official, like NFL, streaming local, national live television, almost kind of like Sling TV, things of that nature. I just felt like John Stamos was crashing out like live. He was like having this internal monologue as he's at this piano trying to like play music, and he's like having writer's block. And I just felt like it detracted from the entire story of Zeem. I'm more confused why John Stamos is doing what he's doing than Zeem even being a thing these days. I think it might be a D. Like, I'm genuinely thinking that this commercial is so bad. There is one more commercial that actually showed after the NFL Super Bowl game was done, and that was Air Jordan's Love Hurts. Because if you guys don't know, a lot of athletes do get signed to different brands. Jalen Hurts is signed to Air Jordan, which is Michael Jordan's line, his brand. It's his whole identity. It's even in the name, so hopefully that makes sense. And it just so happens that, like, he's talking about, man, you love to hate him for saying the right thing, or you love to hate that he's, not good here, not good there, but he won the Super Bowl. And now that puts him above an upper echelon than other people in the NFL. And I think Air Jordan, they've been so on it within their Gatorade ads that like Michael Jordan's been a part of, but then also they've been so on point with their ads as well. Almost very similar to Nike. Like, I don't know what freaking Nike, Gatorade, and Air Jordan are on, but they are on it. They are doing ads in the right way with sports, with athletes. They're talking about narratives that are like in real life. People have talked about these many things. And what are you going to say now that Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl champion and a Super Bowl MVP? And Air Jordan, they had a beautiful ad. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful ad. I'm giving this one an S tier because it's right after the Super Bowl. The game finished and boom. Let me know down in the comment section what your favorite commercial from this Super Bowl cycle was. If there's anything that I got wrong, feel free to roast me in the comment section below. And especially if I don't remember any actor or actress's names, please let me know down in the comment section below. Thank you guys again so much for watching. And most importantly, remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. 07. Peace.